Welcome to the Deep Dive. This is the Kenya Wantam Notam movement, the KWM podcast. Today we're working with some really powerful source material, specifically excerpts from The Betrayal of Uhuru, Land, Looting, and the Legacy of Kenyatta's Kenya.
Yes, and this is crucial. We're not just looking back at dry history. We're really trying to unpack the origin story of modern Kenyan inequality.
Right.
Our mission here is to get to grips with that foundational betrayal of independence. That moment, the dream of Uhuru Mashamba, freedom and land, was essentially hijacked.
Hijacked and turned into something else entirely.
Exactly. A structure of, organized theft.
Yeah.
And that legacy, that structure, is what Kenya is still wrestling with today.
It's quite stark when you look at the sources, how fast that happened. 1963 arrives. There's this massive wave of hope, of expectation across the nation.
Understandably so.
People genuinely believed, after decades of struggle, that the land, especially the fertile highlands, would finally come back to them. But the sources are clear. The reality was almost immediately a cruel betrayal.
Cruel is the right word.
So let's get into the mechanics. How did this betrayal actually take shape? Structurally, the government rolled out this policy, willing buyer, willing seller. On the surface, it sounds, fair.
Yeah.
Equitable even. Standard practice. It used funds from the departing British government, the World Bank too, meant to buy out the white farmers.
Yes, it had that veneer of legitimacy. But it was, effectively, a facade, a mechanism designed, perhaps unintentionally at first by some, but certainly in its effect, for exclusion.
Exclusion of whom?
Well, the very people who fought for the land, the landless peasants, the former Mau fighters in the forests, they simply had no money. They couldn't be willing buyers because they lacked the capital.
So if they couldn't buy, who could? Who stepped into that gap?
That's the crux of it. A new elite emerged, politically connected. Mostly politicians, businessmen, often centered around Kenyatta's inner circle and home region. They became known, colloquially, as the Kiambu Mafia. And this group, they weren't just wealthy individuals acting alone. They were the architects and the prime beneficiaries of this new system. They knew how to work it.
How did they work it?
They used state-backed bodies like the Agricultural Finance Corporation, the ASC, to get huge loans, often on very easy terms. Plus, they had insider information. They knew which prime farms were coming onto the market, often before anyone else.
So the state itself was facilitating this transfer?
Precisely. A transfer from the departing white colonial elite to a new, powerful black elite, not to the masses.
And the sources are pretty direct about Jomo Kenyatta's own role in this.
Yes, they're uncompromising on this point. He didn't just preside over it. He actively participated. He became the country's single largest landowner, acquiring vast tracts in the former White Highlands, prime agricultural land, coastal properties.
Vicheha Farm is often mentioned.
That's just one example, yes. The scale of his personal accumulation was, frankly, staggering. When you look at the total land holdings attributed to the Kenyatta family, the sources suggest it reached a size comparable to Rwanda, an entire country.
An entire country's worth of land, held privately, while millions remained landless.
That's the context. While those who had fought and suffered for Uhuru were often pushed into marginal areas or ended up as squatters or in the growing urban slums.
And did the inner circle, the Kiambu Mafia figures, follow his lead?
Oh, absolutely. It became the template. Public office became the pathway to private wealth. You see names like Mbu Koinange, Charles Njonjo, Dr. Nuroi Mungai, key figures in the government amassing huge estates themselves.
Even the settlement schemes, weren't they supposed to fix this, to resettle the landless?
That was the stated intention. But even those were corrupted. The sources point to schemes like Ol Kalu, where the most fertile, desirable plots didn't go to the Mau veterans or the genuinely landless. Instead, they were snapped up by politicians, by civil servants, by the well-connected.
It sounds like a systematic redirection of resources.
It was. And to make this palatable, or at least to provide some sort of justification, Kenyatta developed an ideological cover. He called it African capitalism.
What did that mean in practice?
In practice, it meant justifying this accumulation. The most famous or infamous example is from that rally at Ruringu Stadium. He addressed the former freedom fighters, the landless crowds directly, and told them quite bluntly, Hakuna Shabore.
There's nothing free.
Exactly. There's nothing for free. And that single phrase was incredibly potent. Devastating, really. It reframed what was essentially state-sponsored looting as simply the just reward for hard work.
So if you were poor and demanded land justice, you were just asking for a handout.
Precisely. It delegitimized the claims of the poor, the veterans, the landless. It shut down the argument for redistributive justice. And it cemented this idea that the state that emerged after independence wasn't a radical break from the colonial past.
But a continuation.
A continuation of the extractive colonial state model, just with new managers, new beneficiaries, black faces, but the same underlying system of exploitation.
And a system like that, built on exclusion and grabbing, surely it couldn't tolerate dissent.
Absolutely not. It had to protect itself.
Yeah.
And the way it did that was through fear and ultimately violence. If you spoke out too loudly, if you questioned the looting, if you challenged the narrative, well, there were consequences, severe ones.
Establishing a culture of impunity right from the start.
Yes, impunity became embedded in the system, and this was underscored by a series of high-profile political assassinations.
The sources highlight a few key ones. Gama Pinto in 1965.
Pinto was the first major one, a socialist politician, very vocal about the growing economic inequality, questioning where the fruits of independence were going. He was gunned down outside his home. It sent a chilling message across the political landscape.
The first clear warning shot, essentially.
You could say that. Then in 1969 came the assassination of Tom Mboya.
A very significant figure. Powerful, charismatic, a Luo leader.
Immensely significant. His death was a major turning point. Mboya was seen by many as a potential future president, a rival to the dominant Kikuyu clique around Kenyatta. His elimination conveniently removed a major political threat from outside that inner circle, consolidating their power further. Whether it was purely political or had ethnic dimensions, the effect was clear.
Consolidation through violence.
Yes, but perhaps the figure who most powerfully articulated the sense of betrayal felt by ordinary Kenyans was Josiah Mwangi Kariuki. J.M. Kariuki.
A.M., yes, he comes across as the real conscience of the nation in that period.
He really did. He'd been Itani himself during the emergency. He understood the struggle. And he wasn't afraid to speak truth to power. He spoke for the millions who felt cheated, who felt that Uhuru had been stolen from them by a greedy few.
And he coined that incredibly famous phrase.
The one that still resonates today. Kenya has become a nation of 10 millionaires and 10 million beggars. It was such a stark, damning indictment. And it was true. People recognized its truth.
Which made him incredibly popular, but also
incredibly dangerous to the establishment. He wasn't just criticizing, he was directly challenging the legitimacy of the ruling clique and their wealth. He became an existential threat to them.
And the system reacted predictably, brutally.
Yes. In March 1975, J.M. Kariuki disappeared. He was last seen alive at the Nairobi Hilton. Days later, his body was found, mutilated, dumped in the Ngong Hills.
A clear political execution.
Undeniably. It wasn't just about silencing one man, effective though he was. It was a public message. Challenge us, challenge the system, challenge the looting, and this is what happens. It demonstrated that the ultimate price for dissent was death.
So, looking back at that period, what's the lasting damage described in the sources?
The damage is profound. First, corruption became normalized. It wasn't seen as an aberration. It became part of the very fabric of the state expected. Public office was fundamentally twisted from a position of service into an avenue for personal enrichment. That became the model.
And the original sin, the land issue.
It was never resolved. Landlessness remains, as the sources state, one of Kenya's most explosive political and social problems. It fuels poverty, instability, ethnic tensions, and manifests visually in the huge slums surrounding cities like Nairobi, the legacy of the 10 million beggars.
It's a bleak picture, tracing that history, but what really struck me in the material is that it doesn't just stop at diagnosing the problem. There's a strong sense that understanding this past is the key to changing the future.
Absolutely.
And this idea emerges that the future isn't written by those who stay quiet, that history isn't just made in official offices anymore, it's being written by ordinary people demanding accountability, which really speaks to the whole philosophy behind the Kenya Wantam Notam movement.
Precisely. It's about reclaiming that narrative, documenting the truth from the ground up.
So this feels like the right moment to talk directly to you, our listener. We strongly encourage you to get involved. Join the Kenya Wantam Notam movement, KWM.
It's easy to do. Just visit www.wantamnotam.com. Go there and create your account.
Once you're in, you'll see all 47 Kenyan counties are listed. Find your county.
And then start posting. Share your observations, your ideas, your truths. What needs changing in your village, your town, your city? What solutions do you see? That is genuinely how a movement grows, one honest post at a time.
Yeah, and it's important to understand what this platform is. It's not just another news site, is it?
Not at all. Think of it as a people's record, a living archive. Every comment, every piece of truth shared there, it creates a trail, a record that can't be easily erased or spun by politicians or PR firms.
So when you post, you're not just venting or reacting.
You are documenting. You're contributing to a collective testimony of Kenya as it actually is, experienced by its people. History isn't just written by elites in offices anymore. It's written right there on platforms like wantamnotam.com by you.
Okay, so having documented the betrayal, let's move into the solutions proposed in the sources. How do we actually reckon with this legacy? The material suggests the call for returning what was stolen isn't about revenge, right? It's about national solvency, making the country functional again.
Exactly. The scale of the historical looting is so vast that simple, outright expropriation could be chaotic, maybe even counterproductive. It could trigger conflicts. So the sources propose a more, let's say, surgical approach, focused on changing the system's rules.
And what are the key elements of that surgical approach?
There are two main pillars, really. First, breaking the cycle of impunity. This means liberating the institutions that are supposed to fight corruption. We're talking about the judiciary, the Office of the Director of Public Prosecutions, the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission.
Liberating them how? They exist now.
Liberating them by guaranteeing their genuine independence. Crucially, this means financial independence, ring-fencing their budgets so politicians can't starve them of funds if they investigate the wrong people, and giving them real teeth, full prosecutorial powers to investigate and charge anyone, no matter how powerful or connected they are. Impunity only dies when people see consequences.
So real independence, real power.
Yes. Imagine a former top official or a tycoon known for their connections actually being investigated, prosecuted, convicted, and their stolen assets seized. That sends a powerful message. That's when impunity starts to crumble.
Okay, that's pillar one. Institutional teeth. What's the second pillar?
The second pillar tackles the root issue, the land itself, specifically the hoarding of vast tracts of unproductive land. The sources call the current land taxation system a colonial relic because it basically encourages speculation.
So what's the proposed alternative?
A progressive annual land value tax. This is quite innovative. The tax isn't based on the value of buildings or improvements on the land. It's based on the unimproved value of the land itself, just the location, the raw earth.
And it's progressive.
Yes, meaning the rate increases with the size of the land holding. Someone owning a small plot pays very little, or nothing. Someone hoarding thousands of acres pays a very high rate annually.
What effect would that have?
It makes sitting on huge idle estates economically unsustainable. If you own vast areas and aren't using them productively, the annual tax bill would become enormous. It forces a choice. Either develop the land, create jobs, grow food, build housing, or sell it off to someone who will, simply to avoid the tax burden.
So it achieves land redistribution through market forces, driven by tax policy rather than political decree.
Exactly. It's a way to unlock idle land, make it available, and curb speculation without the political upheaval of direct confiscation.
These sound like powerful structural changes. But systems can be undermined. How do you ensure transparency, keep things honest?
Transparency is critical. The sources call it the essential disinfectant. The proposal is radical transparency in land ownership. All public land registries must be digitized, fully searchable by anyone, for free.
So you or I could just go online and see who owns that huge farm down the road.
Precisely. Imagine the impact. When ordinary citizens can easily see, with a few clicks, that one individual or one family owns land the size of a county while they struggle for a tiny plot, that knowledge creates immense political pressure for reform. It makes hidden wealth visible. It makes the scale of the inequality undeniable.
And all these reforms ending impunity, land value tax, transparency, they connect to a bigger idea in the source material, this concept of the architecture of dignity.
Yes. Dignity isn't just a feeling. It's the outcome of a state that actually functions for its citizens. When you tackle corruption, when you unlock resources from hoarded land, you generate massive revenues.
Revenues for what?
For the things that build genuine dignity: starved public services, a functioning national health service for everyone, quality public education, and critically, massive investment in social housing. Dismantling the slums like Kibera, which are the physical scars of that initial betrayal, and building decent homes, that's building dignity.
This reframing is powerful. It suggests the core struggle in Kenya isn't what it often appears to be on the surface.
Exactly. The analysis cuts through the ethnic divisions that are so often manipulated. It argues the fundamental conflict, ever since 1963, hasn't really been Kikuyu versus Luo or Kalenjin versus Luo or any other group versus group. It's been between a small, cohesive class of plunderers and the vast, fragmented mass of the plundered.
So real hope lies in uniting that plundered majority across ethnic lines based on shared economic interest.
That's the new consciousness the sources point towards, reframing Kenyan identity around that shared experience of being cheated and the shared aspiration for a just state.
Which leads to a pretty provocative conclusion.
It does. The ultimate fight, then, is for Kenya's second independence. Not freedom from foreign colonizers this time, but freedom from the internal colonizers, freedom from the elite that captured the state and stole the promise of the first Uhuru.
So, to recap, we've journeyed through how the very foundation of the independent Kenyan state was, according to these sources, compromised by organized theft and the betrayal of the freedom struggle. But, crucially, the analysis doesn't leave us there. It offers a clear, if challenging, blueprint for how national solvency, justice, and dignity could be achieved.
Yes, a blueprint built on ending impunity, reforming land taxation, ensuring transparency, and reinvesting in people.
And the time for just talking about this history is perhaps over. The time for documenting it, demanding change, is now. Which brings us back to KWM. As a welcome gift for being part of this conversation, for potentially joining the movement, KWM is offering 3 free ebooks.
And these aren't just any books. They're chosen specifically to deepen this understanding and, frankly, to provoke action. They definitely hit where the truth hurts.
You can find the links right next to the KWM podcast link on the navigation section of the website, wantamnotam.com. First up is Ebook 1, We Must Never Forget These Kenyan Heroes. This is a raw account, honoring patriots who genuinely fought for justice, often paying the ultimate price. It's a reminder that real heroes didn't always wear suits, they carried courage.
Then there's Oya Ebook 2, Kenya After Kenyatta, The Empire of Looters. This takes a sharp, unflinching look at how the pattern of betrayal became policy, replicated and refined by subsequent regimes. It's the kind of history you likely didn't get in school, written for those who still care enough to be angry and to demand better.
And finally, Oy Ebook 3, The Betrayal of Uhuru, Land, Looting, and the Legacy of Kenyatta's Kenya. This is the core source material we've been diving into today, providing that foundational analysis.
So please download all 3 ebooks. They're free. Read them, discuss them, share them with friends, family, colleagues. Let the truths within them push you. Push you to speak louder, to question harder, maybe even to expose deeper injustices you see around you. Remember, the future really doesn't belong to the quiet.
Thank you for tuning into this deep dive from the Kenya Wantam Notam Movement KWM podcast.